If you can just see the next step in your path, you only have to have enough courage to take that step. You don't have to even have courage to do anything after that, because momentum will come as you act. Welcome back to Lean In With Lizzy. I am so excited to be on with you today. We are actually in our last 3 episodes of season 1, which I can hardly believe. We started just last September, and I love the community that it feels like we're building here together. And the women who I'm hearing from, I got a lot of messages and comments back after last week's episode, and it just fired me up for what we're going to be doing in season 2. So ending season 1, end of June, and then we will be launching season 2 of Lean In With Lizzy sometime in August. Keep tuned to the socials to know exactly when we're starting. I have some new things that I'm trying out next season that I think you're really going to love. I'll be sharing some of the guests and some teasers over there. If you're excited about what's coming, that's the place to tune in. I really hope that this podcast and community becomes the place to turn for inspiration, for courage, and for you to believe that you have a gift to change the world. And I can feel that. The comments I get most often are actually women who are saying, I was scared to do this thing and I did it. And I love that that's what we're building here. Women who are going out and doing and changing the world. And that is you. In big ways, in small ways, in all ways, it matters and it's making a difference. And so happy to have you here. If it's your 30th listen, if it's your first listen, I'm so excited for what we're digging into today. So today on the podcast, I'm doing something a little bit new, and it's something I've wanted to do for a little while. So if I had all the time in the world, I would carve out a chunk of that time and open up my house and just do free mentoring. I would allow anyone to come in, ask the questions they have, ask for advice, ask for encouragement, ask to be a little bit fired up, and it would do nothing but honestly fill me up. Like, that is my flow state, is answering questions and offering advice and giving counsel and wisdom, a lot from mistakes I've made in my life, if I'm being really honest. And then also seeing the things that have gone well and seeing where I have regrets. And so if I had enough time to do that for every one of you, I would. There are actually two of my muses in the Bible that I love so much and want to be like, and it's Solomon and Deborah. And this is basically what they did. They were like these righteous, wise judges. And Deborah sat under the tree and she just invited people to come be with her and give them wisdom on what was going on in their life. And not only that, she had so much courage. She even walked with a general after she gave him advice on what he should do. And that, again, that's who I want to be like. I'm walking with you. I believe in you. And I also want to give you specific counsel when you need it. So today's episode is an effort to do that. And it's my first ever Ask Me Anything. I took a question from you over on Instagram, a question that I got, and I'm going to be answering that today. And I'm really, really excited about it. But before I share that question that I'm jumping into, I would love to start actually with a postscript from last episode where I talked about being vessels, not VIPs. And I loved that episode. I think a lot of you loved it too. And I loved hearing from you about the content over there on that episode. Check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. At the end of the episode, I ended with a little bit of irony. In the whole episode, I talked about the importance of not seeking to be a VIP and for validation and for people to affirm that you're enough and that you're okay and that you're important, and instead focus your life on being a vessel, on filling yourself up and pouring that into others. Well, last weekend on Saturday, I went to a funeral of a good friend, Zach Adamson. I have his funeral program here. He was actually the piano teacher of my twins and just a real remarkable human. He, to me, was the epitome of what it means to live your life as a vessel. He was 31 years old. He was a brilliant musician, had done some really incredible things in his short career, including playing with Mannheim Steamrollers and their Christmas tour all last year. And really what he did musically was only met by who he was as a human. If you were in Zach's presence, it was like he had nowhere to be and nothing to do. There was this radical presence about him that just was comforting, but also was endearing. And made you feel like you were the most important person to him and that he felt lucky to be with you. When I was headed up to his funeral with our girls, I was wondering, like, okay, a 31-year-old musician, I wonder who's going to be in the audience. I wonder how many people are going to be at the funeral. I wonder who he's touched, knowing that all four of us, my three daughters and I, wouldn't have missed his funeral because of how we felt around him. I was astounded when I walked in the church, and it was all the way to the back of this huge church with standing room only by the time it started. And this wasn't because there was so much family. It was all the people he had touched in his 31 years of life, one by one, person to person, just showing up and pouring into them. And it was such a beautiful tribute to exactly what we talked about, that it doesn't matter how many years you've lived. It doesn't matter your profession or where you work or what you do, or if the world has this notoriety of what you've done. The real magic, and this came out in every talk that was given and every person who got up and spoke, the magic really is in showing up to pour into other people every day. There was one story that was told by his teacher, Scott Holden, who was his chair when he got his master's at Brigham Young University's in, I believe, piano performance. And the professor got up and he had a piece that he performed, which was just beautifully done and felt so much like Zach. But before he got up, he said, I want to share this story about Zach and who he is. He said at one of the classes that they had, there were, all ages there, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, who were coming, and it was a performance class. So you came in and you performed among a lot of other performers and then were critiqued on that performance. And this professor Holden said, it's probably one of the scariest audiences to perform in front of, because everyone has that critical eye and everybody knows what a great performance sounds like and looks like. And so Professor Holden said that I got up and I kind of gave this probably too long spiel about how good it needed to be and how to stand and all the things. And as I was winding up, Zach raised his hand. And I said, okay, yes, Zach, like, curious what he was going to say. And Zach said, I think the important thing is just to express, not to impress. And I jotted that down and thought, I want to share that with this community. Again, thinking about being a vessel. You are there to be an expression of love and an expression of light and an expression that the people around you matter and that they're seen and they're valued. And impressing them will probably only get in the way of that message. So again, it's just a tribute and an honor to Zach and what he's meant to our family, and as a thank you to his family for sharing his light and love with us. Thank you. So to the topic of the day, here's the question I received. Again, this is the first segment of Ask Me Anything on Lean In With Lizzy. Julie on Instagram said, I'm 57 and I feel called to do photography. I actually get emotional talking about it. I bought an expensive camera and I haven't done a thing with it. Why am I so scared? So let's just get this straight. This episode is not just for aspiring photographers. It's not just her. It's not her age. And it's definitely not a lack of desire. Like, you can already tell she's bought a fancy camera. She's trying to do something, but she's sitting there with fear. And I believe with my whole heart, because I've seen this with almost every woman, I would say, maybe every woman I've worked with, whether they're 27 or 67, when you feel called to do something, fear becomes a part of the equation. That is the most natural thing to have happen. If you've started a lot of things, you may pay less attention to it. If it's your first thing, it may feel debilitating, but it is absolutely there every time you go to do something new. Fear has a way of whispering, what if I'm not good enough? What if this is actually a waste of my time? What if I fail? What will people think? Here's what we forget. Fear isn't proof that you're off course. Fear is a proof that you care. So today's episode, this is what we're going to walk through. We're going to talk about what fear really is and why it shows up when you're ready to grow. 2, I'm going to give you a practical checklist to help you decide if it's time to start something new and if what you're about to do is really worth pursuing. Number 3, what to do when you feel a call, but you don't feel ready. And 4, how to work with your fear instead of waiting for it to go away. The big spoiler in this is you don't have to feel fearless to move forward. You just have to be willing. You don't need permission to start, but if you do, I'm going to give it to you today. You just need a little bit of courage and a lot of grace. And that is an equation that has worked every time. A little bit of courage, a lot of grace. So let's dive in. I'm going to start out with a story, which was really one of the first times professionally where I had this much fear. I had had it in other things. I think going to law school was definitely something that felt scary to me. Um, Different points in my life, there were other things, serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ for Latter-day Saints. For sure, there was fear in that, leaving my family, not to talk to them except a couple times in 18 months. But as a grown-up girl in big boots, I guess, this was the first time I was making really a pivot and a shift in my career and in my ministry. So I had finished my law school experience. I'd had a baby and I'd been working for probably about a year. We were living on the East Coast at the time, and I was lucky enough to have been working with my dad for that first year in a kind of miraculous sort of way. The projects we were working on and how I found the project and how he was working on it all had aligned just perfectly. And as a side benefit, it meant I could fly back to where a lot of my family lived with my baby and see them on the cost of the company, right? And so it was a really sweet time of life. Also, the work I was doing was really, really interesting. But after about a year, maybe year and a half, my dad and my mom were leaving as mission leaders, again, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to Australia. So they were going to be across the world, on the other part of the world. And the project we were working on was still continuing, but it was going to be in a different form. I knew that the travel payoff was different to come to the West Coast without them there, without honestly a babysitter for my baby as well. And so I could just kind of feel like the winds of change. And at this point, I just started to be really thoughtful about what was next. And I've told this story on a few other podcasts. If you've heard this, it was really, I think, part of my origin story of feeling called and knowing what my work was. I, at that point, again, like started praying, started doing a lot of free writing, asking friends who knew me well if they had ideas or thoughts. And right about that time, I was sent this book called The Power of Everyday Missionaries by Clayton Christensen, who was already one of my heroes and has only become more so since. As I read the book, there were all sorts of chapters just about talking about faith authentically and openly and how to make it more normal and natural. And then there was this one chapter about sharing faith online. And I get to that chapter and I had no desire to share faith online. I did, though, want to be more normal in talking about it. I thought it was really weird that something as important as spirituality and religion had really was taboo in our conversation, especially on the East Coast. And I wanted to be able to talk about it in a way that just felt more normal. And so I'm reading this chapter and just this thought won't leave me. Like, you need to start sharing your faith online. And I think this is crazy. Like, I've gone to law school. I've had already a really cool first year of what I've done after law school. I want to parlay that into something really interesting. It's not a family blog talking about faith. And for those of you who remember the atmosphere at that time, a lot of moms were starting blogs. Like, this wasn't something unusual. And so there were all sorts of thoughts and feelings as I was thinking about starting this blog. But the first thing that came in was this fear. Like, who are you to start a blog? And you're not good at photography. And frankly, you're okay at writing, but that's not really your strong suit in storytelling either. I was also worried about what people think. I was worried about how it would appear. I was worried that I didn't know anyone who talked about faith online, and was worried that that was going to come across as self-righteous or preachy, or that I would lose some friendships because people would feel like maybe I would judge them. And anyway, all sorts of fear. And there was this one moment where it was so overwhelming that it was almost like I could see the lie. Because I realized almost every woman I know is starting a family blog. Like, this isn't actually a hard thing to do. This fear must be coming from somewhere or someone else. And You know this if you've listened and been a part of this community for a long time. I speak in religious terms, and I think I believe in a God and I believe in a devil. And whether or not you do or you don't, I think there are patterns that we can see, whether it's our brains or whether it's a devil, that when we come across something great and something impactful and something outside of our comfort zone, opposition comes in. And I could almost, because the opposition was so great, I realized, oh, this isn't me. This isn't actually my voice saying I shouldn't do this thing. This is totally irrational fear stopping me from something that I think might be important. It feels important. I don't know why, but it feels like it's important. And so I decided to take the first step and I hired a designer and I said, I'm going to do this. Now, I'm going to stop the story at that point and obviously not going to go into the rest of what happened. Ironically, I think that early experience of starting that blog and talking and speaking out online was really foundational work for what I'm doing now here on this podcast and for projects that I'm envisioning coming up that I'm super excited about. But I want to stop at that point because that's really where this question came in from my friend Julie. I'm 57. I'm feeling called to photography. I've bought a fancy camera and I'm so scared. And why am I scared? Where is this coming from? So again, we're going to start with what fear really is and why it shows up when you're ready to grow or do something new. 2, a practical checklist to just say, but is this really the thing? Like sometimes fear is good. It can stop us from real things that aren't in our best interest, that aren't healthy, that could potentially hurt us, to hurt our families. 3, what to do when you feel a call but you don't feel ready. And 4, how to work with your fear instead of waiting for it to go away. So, number 1, what fear really is and why it shows up. Fear is a sign of growth, not danger. It's your brain trying to protect you from risk. But our brains don't know the difference between physical danger and emotional vulnerability. If you look into the science of fear, and I'm actually going to put a few of these places where I pulled some of this research from into the show notes. Back, whatever, as our brains were developing and evolving, there was real fear that was physical fear that was meant to keep us safe, right? You hear about this, the fear from a tiger leaping out and how you respond, that your eyes dilate and you have extra sensory perception, whether it's smell or taste or hearing. You can hear things that you wouldn't normally be able to hear. The purpose of fear is to keep you safe. But as our brains have evolved, we don't know what's really going to do us in. There then came a point where social groups were the most important thing. And whether or not you were protected in a social group really meant if you could be protected and survive. And so, again, this emotional vulnerability, if you feel like or have an idea and you feel called to it, but it feels like it may put you outside of a social group, that may feel just as scary as if there were a tiger waiting around the corner. I may not have family support anymore. My best friends may not show up for me. People might start saying I'm weird or out of the social group. That's just as real to your brain as something physical. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala fires the same warning signals, whether you're being chased by a lion or submitting your first article. So fear doesn't mean stop. It means to pay attention. Again, thinking about what your brain does is when it's enhancing all your senses, it's telling you pay attention. There's something here worth paying attention to. Also really interesting in the literature about education and learning. Before you're ready to actually learn something, this isn't just read through something or try on a concept, but when you get to the concept in math or in writing and a grammar structure where it's actually hard and you don't understand it, there's a response that you have that makes you feel this friction and this discomfort, and it widens the gap so your brain can take it in. There's a purpose for it. And so when you're sensing this in yourself, it's just a sign to pay attention. This is something that's going to move you from comfort to discomfort. That's not a bad thing. Oftentimes, that's a really powerful thing and a really great thing. You need to know the difference, and we're going to get into point 2. Elizabeth Gilbert, one of my favorite authors, calls fear a backseat driver. It's always there, but it doesn't get to steer. But you can listen to it and let it run your life, or you can say, that's just the backseat driver, may or may not have great advice and great wisdom for me. Your brain always resists the unfamiliar. This is a crazy thing. If your brain can choose comfortable failure or scary progress, it will choose the comfortable failure every time. Your brain would rather fail than progress if there's fear attached to the progression. So if you're feeling a call to do something, if you're feeling a drive to do something, if you feel excitement to do something, you need to know that it's probably going to come with the sweaty palms, the racing mind. It means that there's something big waking up inside of you. Again, if this is your first time walking down this path, it might feel debilitating. It might feel like this really is a warning sign from your spirit or from your body that it's a big stop sign, that you shouldn't proceed. People who do this regularly start to crave this feeling because they know that this is the good idea. This isn't a safe idea. This is probably an idea that no one else is acting on right now and is going to be a novel idea. So, Julie, the fact that you're having this thought, even though there are for sure other photographers and who knows where the fear is coming from, for you and your progression, this might be a sign to pay attention. What I do second when the fear comes and you're saying to pay attention, I wrote down this huge checklist of then where I would go. I think at this point in my life, because I've been through this many times, this is when I've done some really great things. And this is also where I have regrets and where I've done things that were just like not the most fruitful in how I went about the next step. So here's the list. And if you're listening to this and you're like Julie, right in the middle of starting something new or thinking of something new, and also, if you're not like Julie, but you're doing something and you don't know if it's fruitful anymore, if maybe you should pivot to something new and stop that thing, this checklist is for you. You may write down these questions and you may want to journal out the answers to them to get clarity. You might want to talk through them with a friend. But these are the questions that have helped me. First, am I excited about it? This one's a little bit tricky. Fear can mask excitement. Fear can be so debilitating and triggering and crippling that you may feel like I can't even feel excitement. But that feeling of excitement is a really good sign. I think the second question I would follow up with, did this feeling or call come out of the blue? This is a really good one for me. I've talked about a similar concept in some of the other episodes. If it's something that's already on my mind that I've been thinking about for a while, it's not as big of a leap. There typically doesn't need to be as much fear because I've already warmed up to the idea. But if the idea came up out of the blue, it wasn't even something you normally think about, it's a pretty good sign you're on a good track. So are you excited about it? Again, knowing that fear may mask that. And did this call come out of the blue? Great question to ask. 3, maybe one of the best questions to ask, what's driving me in this? Am I being driven from wanting to be seen or wanting to serve? And it could be some of both. Typically, it is a little bit of both. But if the only reason you want to do this thing, and typically this is if you're making up your own path, honestly, is to be seen by people, usually not something worth tackling, not worth doing. If your main motivation is wanting to serve, even if there's pride there and you think about, and maybe I could be seen and maybe I could be important. If the primary reason you do it is because there's an element to help and to give and to create value for another human, that's a great reason to be driven. If it's purely for those reasons of wanting to be seen, not a good thing to follow. Not helpful, not fruitful, not going to be a career path that's going to be enjoyable. You're chasing something that you can never guarantee and also won't satisfy. Another question, am I running towards purpose or am I running away from discomfort? If you're just running away from something, that's just running back into the comfort zone. If you're running towards more purpose in your life, it's a great key again that you're on the right path. Another question, ask yourself what satisfaction would look like. If you followed this feeling, what would make you proud a year from now? The next question I would ask is this coming from a place of wholeness or trying to prove that I'm enough? This one's really similar, that do I want to be seen or do I want to serve? If you're doing something to try to prove that you're enough, again, seeking validation, this is like the VIP thing we talked about in the last episode, it's not going to sustain you. If it's coming from a place of being whole and wanting to give and serve, it's going to be something worth going after. Now, you can think about what satisfaction would look like. What would make me proud in this thing a year from now? And I'm going to say something a little controversial here from experience. If you have an idea and you feel a pull and a call, we don't know why it came, right? I've I don't think I've dedicated a whole episode to this, but I've alluded to this in another episode. Often when I get a pull or a call or an idea or a thought, it's just a what. It's just, again, photography, and you're buying a camera and you don't totally know the why. Or in this case, for me, it was starting a blog. The pride in us, the seeking to prove, the seeking to be seen will then say, if I'm feeling a pull to do this thing, it could be because blog is going to blow up. It could be because I'm going to be the best photographer in the world. And really, again, those who believe in God or this pull from the universe, it might have nothing to do with those things. It may be so you meet one person on your journey. It may be so you get practice and preparation to do something next, that it's just foundational work for what's next to come. It also could be so that you have some really good life experience to apply to something totally unrelated, to mentor another person, to take the failure and to learn better and not make that mistake the next time. I had a friend once who was creating this really cool, I can't remember if it was an app or software, and she and her husband were really excited about it and getting it off the ground, and it just didn't take off. And I remember having a conversation with her and her saying, like, I now am questioning whether or not I can feel inspired or whether or not I can be led in things like this. Like, what got in the way? And my advice to her was, what if the point was what you learned? What if this platform really doesn't matter that much and you're going to go build something better because of what you've learned from it? So while it's important to dream big, I think there's a difference between dreaming really big and having pride that your thing has to be the best or you have to be seen because of it. So again, this practical checklist, would this be worth doing? What would make you satisfied? And maybe what's the thing that I can see this becoming, and can I do this picture, this version of it, this 1.0 version of what I'm seeing? Can I commit to a full 1.0? Maybe not a 2.0, because a 2.0 might not matter. There may never be a level 3 or 4 of the project you're currently working on, and there might. So being open to doing it well and doing it big and being excellent, and also knowing, can I be satisfied with this first version of what I can see? Another question, what resources would I need to make this happen? And am I committed to finding them? Again, thinking of the version 1.0. It could be raising capital. It could be setting aside a certain amount of hours. Can you commit to something that would make you feel satisfied, like you followed the call would be? Can you commit to that? Another, starting this thing require sacrificing something I value more? This has really been a great question for me when I have ideas that are just good ideas that aren't necessarily that fruitful, but I think, man, no one is doing this thing. I should fill that void. I think we only have so much bandwidth, all of us. We have so many hours in the day, and we have things that we're uniquely gifted and able to do. There's also other good ideas that are kind of out there in the periphery that maybe aren't so core to what we're doing, but that are really good and could even be financially successful or socially successful. But if it's requiring sacrifice of something you value more, whether it's your relationships, your family, your sleep, your health, or even a project that's more important to your life's work, not worth doing. Great idea, not worth doing. Another one, have you thought through options C, D, and E? Often when we have a good idea, there's option A and B. I talked a little bit about this on the podcast with Ann Bednar when we had her in here. And we think it's either I jump all in and I start this company or become the head of this organization, or I volunteer 30 hours a week. And we forget to ask, is there a CDE option that's not just start or don't start, but maybe test out this thing or try it smaller or just start by doing it for fun? There's so many examples of women and men who started interesting careers or projects or relationships from a sense of playfulness, not intensity. And I think we devalue that. I know I devalue that. So when you have a great idea in a call, what if you were playful about it? What if you started your photography from a lens, no pun intended, of being playful and saying, I'm going to go do this for fun and just find the joy in it? What if that was the purpose in of itself, was just to find joy? And then you're open and you're in the right atmosphere to attract the good things that could come. Again, what if it's a friend you're to meet? And because you're showing up playfully and light and happy, you are attracting the things that are also light and good and happy. Another question, do I feel some kind of a spiritual pull, even if I don't fully feel ready? Interesting here, I never ask, do you feel fully ready and prepared? I've never asked that question. I never asked the question, am I totally qualified to do this thing? Because I think that's irrelevant. I think if it's really out of your comfort zone, inherent in the call is you are unprepared. Inherent in the call is you need God. Inherent in the call is you are ready for growth. So asking whether or not you're fully prepared or ready just doesn't matter. The answer to that isn't important. The last two, who is someone I could talk to that believes in me and could help me think clearly on this subject? In the show notes, I'm going to share one of my favorite books by author Richard Scott, and it's called 21 Principles of Revelation. And I have turned to this book over and over again for the last 20 years. And he just gives these principles of how to tell if it's you, if it's God, if it's none of the above, if it's indigestion. And one of them in there, he talks about when we come across something in our life that's highly emotional. I read this book a lot in my dating years as I was thinking about whether I should get married and when and to whom. He talks about some decisions in life are so emotional, you can't navigate them, even if you're prayerful and thoughtful and doing it with God by yourself. The emotions, and again, in the case of dating, the attraction, the physicality, the allure might be too strong for you then to be objective and spiritual about the decision. Turning to someone who has your best interest in mind, who believes in you and who sees the best in you to help you parse out what's emotion and what's spiritual or what's an answer or what's logical can be really helpful at a point like this. Now, ironically, I'm going to give a little caveat to this, that there may be times when you know it's right and you know it's good and you know it's your path, and those closest to you may not see it and may not agree. And this has happened to me in some of the biggest decisions that I've made. It was still helpful for me in those times to turn to trusted advisors because it only clarified what I knew, that what they were saying was great advice, but I could feel that there was a call inside me that was different. A really short example was back in the dating time period of my life. I was dating someone and feeling like I should go on a mission. A lot of girls in my faith weren't serving missions at that time. A lot more go now. And I was dating a great guy and really struggling with being able to feel what was right. And I think I knew in my heart, like I was feeling called. Now, I went to spiritual advisors. I went to two of my favorite professors at the university who I had more of a relationship with. I went to my spiritual advisor, my bishop in my congregation. I talked to all sorts of people who I knew had my best interests in mind. And every one of them said, which was really the prevailing counsel of the day, if you have an opportunity to get married, get married. And I just knew that there was a call inside of me. And so even in the case when it goes against what those people say, it will help you solidify what's coming from your heart and maybe what's coming from pride or your mind or from fear. Lastly, do I know how I really feel? And a great piece of advice here that I've used over and over again is free writing about the question. Where is there fear? What excites me? What do I feel nervous about? What's the worst that could happen? And really just trying to get clarity on what's happening in your own mind. So that is point two, as you're thinking about, okay, here's what fear is. It's a great thing for me to just say, pay attention. Number two, I need some kind of a litmus test on if I'm feeling called to a thing or I've been in a thing for a long time. How do I know if it's worthwhile to stay in that thing? Number three, what do you do when you feel a call, but you don't feel ready? And I alluded to this one before, and I wish I could express enough passion on this, if it's really something worth doing, you will never feel ready. That is the point. That is why it's going to make you grow and why it's going to be worthwhile and why it's needed in the world, because likely not as many people are doing it in the way you can do it, or the thing that you're doing, or reaching the people that you will reach if you do it. That is the best sign that you're on a great track. So no one ever feels 100% ready. Take courage in that, take comfort in that. If you wait until you're ready, you are going to miss the window of opportunity. It's just how it goes. The window is here for a time. It will not always be open. So what do? You take the first faithful step. That's all that's ever required. I think you can also take a lot of courage in this, that if you can just see the next step in your path, you only have to have enough courage to take that step. You don't have to even have courage to do anything after that, because momentum will come as you act. There's a business saying that I love that honestly a lot of businesses ascribe to, and this isn't small little family-owned mom and pop shop businesses that applies there. These are the big companies. You build the parachute after you jump. And that's how a lot of them work, because they know that that window of opportunity doesn't stay open forever. You just have to jump. Also, remember, if you're feeling that fear and not totally ready, maybe this thing isn't the thing. You can tell yourself, maybe this is just the doorway to the thing, so let it evolve. That will take the pressure off of doing it perfectly, which shouldn't be there anyway. You already know you don't have to be ready and prepared and perfect at it. But just know, like, I don't even know why I'm doing it. Again, be playful, have joy, go and show up with a full heart. But be just as curious as if you were a kid. This thing sounds interesting and I'm going to do it. Have the same feeling if, again, for Julie showing up in photography, take the pressure off of doing something at an extremely high level for some important reason, and just say, how fun I get to play with something new. Last point we're going to talk about is how to work with your fear instead of waiting for it to go away. A great first step here is just to name the fear. This will help you isolate it from everything else that's good about that idea. You can say, I'm afraid of failing, or I'm afraid of being misunderstood. I'm afraid of looking stupid. I'm afraid that I'm going to ostracize myself from people that I really love. Just name it. That will give you power to know what you're fighting. Another one is normalize it. I hope that this episode has done that to a really big extent for you. Fear means it's worth doing. That's what it means. Opposition means there is goodness on the other side, even if you don't know what it is yet. Just normalize it, that every person who does something great faces this. I'm in good company. Reframe it. Fear isn't your enemy. Fear is empowering you to take the next step. The only enemy is inaction. I'm going to say that again. Fear isn't the enemy. Fear is what will empower you to take the next step. The only enemy is inaction. Ask yourself, as you're trying to work with fear instead of waiting for it to go away, what is the smallest courageous step I can take right now? That might be setting a date on the calendar to go try out your camera. That could be calling up a friend who's a photographer, again, in the case of Julie, and saying, can you help me take my camera for a spin? That could be setting a date to go on a beautiful hike if you're a hiker or you like the outdoors, and just trying and knowing that most of your pictures are going to be really terrible. That's how we all start. If it's something else for you in a business or in a relationship, what's the smallest courageous step you can take, and take it joyfully and playfully? Next, I want you to celebrate courage, not perfection. On this whole journey, the best thing you can do for yourself is don't start being the critique. I think back to the words of my friend Zach told at the funeral: express, don't try to impress. Celebrate every step of courage that you take, because that might be the only thing you're meant to learn from this experience, is just to have enough courage then to do something more or to change your life in a different way. I also want you to remember that everyone you admire once stood right where you are. Everyone. I want you to think about every biblical hero. I want you to think of every great businessman. I want you to think about every writer. They have been in your shoes. The difference between where they are now and where you are is that They let fear empower them to take that next step. This would be a really interesting search on ChatGPT of what was the fear of the people who started and did important things. I think you'd probably find so many interesting case studies. 3 that popped up for me, which are, low-hanging fruit, but Brené Brown didn't publish her first book until her 40s. That one's so cool. She has done such impactful work. But who knows all the steps that came before her first book that also felt scary, that led to her doing that very thing. Julia Child didn't learn to cook until she was 36. Oprah got fired from her first job. We could go on and on and on. What I want you to take from this episode is fear is a signal, not a stop sign. I want you to let it guide you to your brave next step. Again, we talk about this community being a community that empowers each other to go do that thing that you can uniquely do to change the world. That means you can't live in safety. I think really maybe the only badge that we need to wear to live in this community, and I'm going to say the same thing for me, is that we are continuing to evolve, that we're not letting the comfort take over or speak to us or be the voice in our ear that we listen to. Already, as I'm thinking about season 2, I'm really turning to the things that give me energy, and that is what feels scary now. I was so scared to start this podcast and to jump back out on Instagram and on social media and on, all the places that I had really stepped away from for a few years. And coming back to it was scary, but it doesn't scare me anymore. And I'm not just doing something for the rush or a thrill, right? But I know I'm ready for more. I know I'm ready to grow. I know I'm ready to do some things that I wasn't ready to do a year ago. You and I were ready and called to live in faith, and faith is that darkness ahead of what we can see right ahead of us. That is the realm of faith. And again, whether you're thinking about this from a religious and spiritual perspective or just from a scientific perspective of how our brains work, growth comes in that next step. It doesn't come with where you are. If you've lived too long in that space where you currently are, ask for a call. Ask for what the next thing is. Ask for whether it's character development or the project to work on or the relationship to mend that feels a little bit in the dark, because there you will find joy and growth and progression. So if you're scared to start, you are in great company, Julie. I'm so excited to see what's coming of the camera that you bought and the photography and your pull to it. I have no guarantees that that means you're going to be a great photographer. That's not the point, or that you're going to be famous or you're going to make any money from doing it. What I can guarantee you is that you will have a richer life on the other side of your fear. That's what fear is trying to hold you back from, and that is what it's trying to protect you from, but also what you're ready for, or the call wouldn't have come. If you're scared to start anyway. Start now with one tiny courageous step. With what you have from where you are right now as you are. You've got this, and I've got your back. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This has come, I hate to say it, from way too much error in my trial and not as much just from wins. And that is the fun thing about stepping into failure, is hopefully you have a little bit of wisdom to share, and I'm a little step closer to becoming like Solomon and Deborah and these people that I love that have so much wisdom. If you are enjoying this series, I would love to hear about it. And you can do that by just, giving me some feedback on Instagram, or also asking me a question yourself. What would you love me to address on the podcast? You can find me at Lean In With Lizzy over on Instagram. Excited to hear from you, and we will see you next week again for our second to last episode of season 1, and already preparing for it. And we've got some good stuff to come. So excited for that. And we'll see you next week.